Imagine a packed auditorium in the heart of Nashville sometime in 1940. The crowd is a mixture of locals and out-of-towners, farmers who've come in from small rural communities alongside city dwellers curious about country music's soul. There's a buzz filling the air, an electric sense of anticipation for what's to come. Suddenly, the stage lights flicker on, and out steps a figure in a simple floral dress and a wide straw hat still bearing its price tag. She raises a hand high and bellows, "How-dee, I'm just so proud to be here." The crowd erupts, some in laughter, others in applause, and many in a joyful combination of both. That iconic greeting belongs to Minnie Pearl, a character so vivid and so beloved that for over 5 decades she became synonymous with rural wit, good-natured mischief, and a brand of humor that felt as warm as a neighbor's smile. Yet behind that price-tagged hat was Sarah Ophelia Colley Cannon, a woman of surprising contrast, refined and college-educated, yet utterly committed to her role as Minnie, the comic hayseed from Grinder's Switch. Sarah was born in Centerville, Tennessee in 1912, to a relatively comfortable family at a time when most of her future country compatriots were battling the hardships of rural poverty. Her father was a prominent lumberman, her mother kept a refined household, and they made sure Sarah took piano lessons and studied at Ward Belmont College in Nashville, a finishing school that taught drama, etiquette, and all the hallmarks of polished society. If you imagine Sarah strolling pristine hallways in a tidy skirt, discussing Shakespeare or Molière with her professors, you'd be right. She had big dreams of serious theater. She wanted to act in plays, maybe travel the country with a real theatrical troupe. The idea that she'd transform into a comedic country bumpkin with a $1.98 price tag on her hat was not in the script. Not yet, anyway. But life has a way of throwing curveballs. After college, Sarah found freelance work as a director for the Wayne P. Sewell production company, traveling the South to stage and promote small-town plays. She quickly discovered a goldmine of comedic material, local folks, especially in rural backwaters, who had their own brand of humor and storytelling. One day in Baileyton, Tennessee, Sarah met a woman whose outrageous manner and hilarious anecdotal style left her howling with laughter. The woman's breezy authenticity inspired Sarah to create Minnie Pearl. Minnie was to be an exaggerated composite of the funny characters and mannerisms Sarah encountered on her tours. By 1939, Minnie was fully formed in her mind, sassy, naive, big-hearted, but no fool. She wore a thrift store dress, shoes that might have seen better days, and that iconic straw hat with its bright price tag swinging. Minnie Pearl was a comedic match made in honky-tonk heaven, and the persona quickly stole the show wherever Sarah tested it out. Minnie Pearl's official debut was at a bankers' convention in 1940, of all places. This was not the typical small-town gig, but the audience roared with laughter, hooking on to Minnie's down-home charm. News of this funny, straw-hatted character spread. Soon, Sarah, performing as Minnie, got an audition for the Grand Ole Opry in November 1940. The Opry was the beating heart of country music, broadcast nationwide over WSM. Landing a spot was a dream for any aspiring performer, comedic or otherwise. George D. Hay, the Opry's founder, was no easy person to impress, but Minnie's routine had him cackling in minutes. She told a story about her imaginary hometown, Grinder's Switch, and the folks who lived there, like Uncle Nabob and brother, all delivered in that squeaky, unabashed drawl. Hay gave her a slot on the Opry. On November 30th, 1940, Minnie Pearl stepped onto that storied stage for the first time. She was so nervous, she joked later that she almost forgot her opening line, but she didn't. She belted "How-dee," and the crowd roared right back. This was the beginning of a 50-year run that would make her the comedic soul of the Opry. Minnie was an immediate hit. Her comedic bits tapped into a collective nostalgia for rural life that many Americans, especially during the post-Depression era, could relate to. Through the 1940s, Minnie Pearl joined Roy Acuff's traveling troupe, performing for troops during World War II at military bases across the U.S. When the Opry's broadcast got picked up by NBC's nationwide radio hookup, Minnie's voice beamed into millions of living rooms. She was the comedic break in a night of music, a breath of fresh air among all those serious heartbreak ballads and fiddle tunes. For many who listened, her gentle jabs and silly romantic woes were a breath of comedic relief in a world still battered by war. Sarah herself, the woman behind Minnie, led a double life. Offstage, she was refined, well-spoken, philanthropic, and loved the arts. She married Henry Cannon in 1947. Henry was a pilot who had flown during the World War II, then turned to an air charter business. He ended up managing her career, ensuring Minnie Pearl got to her gigs on time, often flying her there himself. They lived in a comfortable Nashville home, a far cry from Minnie's fictional rundown shack. They had no children, but they doted on nieces, nephews, and the many fans who became like extended family. Sarah liked to keep her private life and Minnie's persona separate. Minnie was the comedic country cousin, while Sarah was the cultivated hostess, quietly supporting charities, especially those linked to cancer research later in her life. By the 1950s, Minnie Pearl was unstoppable. She appeared on the Kate Smith Evening Hour in 1952, a major TV break, back when television was still in its infancy. Her signature greeting, "How-dee, I'm just so proud to be here," echoed in living rooms from coast to coast. She joined comedic segments on other variety shows, popped up on The Ed Sullivan Show, and even The Tonight Show. But Minnie was always at her best on the Opry stage or traveling with other country acts. At every performance, the audience waited to see what Minnie would say next about her love life, her fruitless search for a feller, delivered with wide-eyed wonder. In a time when many female entertainers were expected to be glamorous and poised, Minnie soared by being the exact opposite. Her humor was never mean-spirited or coarse, but it was fearless in lampooning the stereotypes of small-town life. In 1969, Hee Haw burst onto the TV scene, an offbeat variety show that blended cornpone comedy with top-tier country music. Roy Clark and Buck Owens hosted cracking jokes in a fictional cornfield county. The show was unapologetically silly. Hay bales, donkey brays, women in gingham dresses telling corny riddles. Minnie Pearl was a perfect fit. She joined the cast from its first season, weaving her comedic persona into sketches that teased the line between kitsch and comedic gold. Her wide-brimmed straw hat and squeal of "How-dee" became a highlight of every episode. She ended up staying with Hee Haw from 1969 to 1991, nearly the entire run. That show reached millions weekly, catapulting Minnie to a new level of fame. She didn't just belong to the Opry crowd anymore, she became a mainstream comedic icon. Despite her comedic success, though, she never tried to become a chart-topping singer. She did record albums, mostly comedic monologues, but her real skill was making people laugh, not nailing melodic lines. While Minnie was thriving, Sarah, still living behind that comedic mask, nurtured a serious side that few fans saw. She wrote Minnie Pearl's diary in 1953, and in 1980 she penned Minnie Pearl, an autobiography. The book shared behind-the-scenes anecdotes, but she never fully let go of the Minnie persona to reveal all of Sarah's complexities. She remained protective of her background, wanting Minnie's authenticity to stand on its own. But in interviews, she'd drop hints about her real life, the formal education, the philanthropic passions, the love for gardening, and her deeper involvement in charitable organizations, especially those related to health care. Over time, this side of her became more public, particularly after a major health scare. In 1985, at 72, she faced a breast cancer diagnosis. The comedic star, so vibrant on stage, was forced to confront mortality. She underwent a double mastectomy, a major procedure, especially for someone in her 70s. The months that followed tested her resolve, but true to her comedic instincts, she turned it into a platform to raise awareness. She gave interviews about how early detection saved her life, offering humor-laced comments like, "I'm still looking for a feller, just got less to offer now." She found it essential to remove the stigma around breast cancer. Audiences, used to seeing Minnie Pearl as a carefree country gal, were touched to discover how strongly Sarah fought for her health. After her recovery, she returned to the Opry, hat perched on her head, showing everyone that a comedic spirit can conquer even a life-threatening illness. But time marches in. By the late 1980s, Minnie Pearl was well into her 70s, still performing at the Opry every weekend she could muster. On Hee Haw, she remained a core cast member, but her comedic bits shifted to cameo appearances, less demanding physically, but still delivering that trademark How-dee. In 1991, Hee Haw retooled, and Minnie stepped away. The same year, tragedy struck her health again. She suffered a major stroke after an Opry performance. This second blow was devastating, more so than the cancer had been. It robbed her of speech and mobility, effectively ending her career. Minnie Pearl, the unstoppable comedic force, was silenced by the stroke. Fans were heartbroken to learn that the woman who never failed to get a laugh could no longer speak her comedic lines. She was 78. For the next few years, she lived in a Nashville nursing facility with Henry Cannon by her side. In 1996, her journey came to a close. Sarah Ophelia Colley Cannon, Minnie Pearl, passed away on March 4, 1996, at 83 from stroke complications. The country music community went into collective mourning. The funeral in Franklin, Tennessee, drew Opry luminaries, some who had shared the stage with Minnie for decades, and others who had grown up idolizing the woman in the straw hat. Roy Acuff, a longtime friend and colleague, reportedly called her family, praising the comedic genius she brought to every show. She was buried in Mount Hope Cemetery in Franklin, alongside Henry, who died the following year. That final farewell was overshadowed by quiet reflection. Minnie Pearl had never recorded a chart-topping single, never snagged a Grammy or a CMA for her comedic monologues. Yet she'd been inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 1975, a testament to her singular impact on the Opry and American entertainment. She'd earned the National Medal of Arts in 1991 from President George H.W. Bush, a rare honor for a comedic performer who wore fake daisies on her hat and boasted of living in a place called Grinder's Switch. The medal recognized her as an American cultural treasure for bringing laughter to the masses, bridging the gap between rural nostalgia and mainstream entertainment, and for doing it all with a big heart. In fact, Dolly Parton, on hearing of her passing, reportedly said, "She was the best friend a country singer could have. Always a smile, always a kind word, always the real thing." Looking back from 2025, Minnie Pearl remains an emblem of how comedic arts can flourish in unexpected spaces. People might not recall every detail of her Opry broadcasts, but they remember that shrill "Howdy" greeting and that $1.98 price tag. They remember Hee Haw segments where Minnie wisecracked with Buck Owens or teased Roy Clark. They remember how she used humor to push forward, never stooping to cruelty, always opting for gentle ribbing. Her comedic style, heavily reliant on the premise of wanting to find a feller, could seem quaint by modern standards, but it was never about actual desperation. It was a satirical vantage point on how small-town women teased about marriage prospects and local gossip. To watch Minnie in her prime was to watch a comedic tightrope act. She portrayed a naive bumpkin while simultaneously winking at the audience, letting them in on the joke that she wasn't so naive at all. Sarah Ophelia Colley Cannon, a woman who juggled a comedic persona so thoroughly that the line between Minnie and Sarah blurred. She once said Minnie was part of her, but she was also just me being me plus a bit of ham. Perhaps that's the best summation. At her core, Sarah was a natural entertainer, as comfortable at a high society function as she was cracking jokes about an imaginary cousin at Grinder's Switch. But it was Minnie who paid the bills. Minnie who let her philanthropic side blossom. Minnie who survived cancer to joke about it on a national platform. Minnie who overcame a stroke until finally the body gave out. Minnie Pearl was an emblem that fun and compassion can be unstoppable forces, bridging class divides, bringing joy to war-weary crowds, and shining a comedic spotlight on everyday life in the American South. So the next time you hear "How-dee" uttered in a comedic sketch, or you see a gag about a $1.98 price tag still attached to a hat, tip your own hat to the memory of Minnie Pearl. She poured 50 years of her life into the Opry, 278 episodes into Hee Haw, 1,000,000 jokes into late-night talk shows, and immeasurable laughter into the hearts of fans from World War II GIs to modern-day YouTube scrollers stumbling upon vintage footage. She left no trail of scandal, no rumored affairs or raucous bar brawls, just a legacy of comedic resilience. In a realm often overshadowed by tragic stories of heartbreak and self-destruction, Minnie Pearl's story stands out as a testament that laughter and kindness can carry you for half a century on the toughest stage of them all, the stage of real life.